T.B.Photo X1.5 TFX, and welcome back to another video. Well, this is going to be the conclusion or something or other of the Mamiya RB-67 flash photography shoot. I have developed the 120 roll of, what was it? It was an Agfa Optima 200 ISO film. But keep in mind that this disclaimer right in the beginning, this was a Lomo roll of film. That means that it had been expired for over a decade. So I actually halved the ISO number. So I didn't shoot this film at box speed. Instead, I halved it to 100 ISO instead, because there is this rule of thumb when it comes to expired film photography that with every decade that the film has been expired, you have to halve the ISO performance. So since this was 1 decade, it was one halving of the performance, which became from 200 to 100, so one stop down. But anyway, in this video I'm gonna do a little bit of an experiment. This was a eBay find from it's a cheap Chinese RGB white balance card that I'm just holding up, so it will come in the film. As you can see on the bottom row, this is so that I can color correct or white balance correct the film. So actually on every of these you have numbers on them. It goes from 0, 1, there are 24 frames here, and on the back you have a table that says the RGB or red, green, blue composition. So number 19, that is the pure white. It says it's RGB. All of the values are the same. It's 252 on the scale. So that's apparently pure white, and then we go up the gray scale to what is considered black, which is 50 all across the board. But anyway, I'll just show this so I can do a dropper in Lightroom. So that's it, and yeah, we're gonna go into the Lomo roll from the RB-67. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna look at him on my Samsung pad and or tablet, whatever you want to call it, and I'll do so that I'm cutting, so you'll hear me do a my critiquisen, as Jared Polin would put it, and I will just cut, and you'll see the pictures while I will just yak about what I think about the photos. But keep in mind also, for you people who want to know, I used Tetanol, a C41 developer, and I develop at 30 degrees, and I follow the instructions, the appropriate development times. Usually, from my experience, I usually don't pre-rinse the film as it says in the instruction, because I have done that with a couple of rolls of expensive 120 rolls of Kodak Ektar, which is, by the way, my favorite film stock of all time so far. But the thing was that actually destroyed the negatives, and I did it the right temperature, the right time, the right everything, and those rolls didn't come out that great. But when I don't do a pre-rinse but just start with developer directly, I get really satisfactory results. So that's just how I do it, but your results may vary. Just that as a disclaimer. And keep in mind, once again, this was an expired film roll, so the images might not be as good as expected. But anyway, let's start with the first one, which is the still life of the fruit bowl. But anyway, yes, I think this image actually came out pretty nice. Keep in mind also, I'm using the Pinacell Studio 16 that can't really handle extreme high resolution images. If we're going to go through all the gear and so on, I then scanned the negatives using the Canon 9000F Mark II. It's a flatbed scanner that I would really recommend to anybody who is into scanning their own negatives. But anyway, I'm looking at these images on the tablet at 1200p of resolution, while the ones used for the video is 300 to 600p of resolution. That is because Pinacell Studio 16 can't really handle the extreme high resolution. But anyway, well, I think that if you look at the protruding lemon on the right hand side of the color cards, if I zoom in on it, you can really see a very sharp defined line. So that lemon is very sharp in focus. The front ball, the green handle on the left hand side, is a little bit soft. In the front of the ball we have the, the glaze has dripped a bit, which was a process of when making the ball. It is a bit, soft focus, so you can really see that we used f8 if I'm not remembering wrongly, but we had the focus put a bit to the back end, so the front of the ball is a bit out of focus, or a bit soft at least, while the middle, where you see the top of the banana and the lemon, that is almost fully visual in the picture, those are more sharply in focus. But all in all, I really think this came out fairly great actually, and we can have another clue that the depth of field or the focus plane was a bit to the back end of the image, because you can see that the paper intersection where the white and the black paper meet is very sharp in focus if you look at the backdrop, which gives an indication that I could have put the focus a little bit farther forward in the picture. But all in all, I think it came out fairly decently at least. Next then, it's the Candelabra, the one where I used the circular polarizing filter. I used this to remove a lot of glare, because here we have a lot of glass and crystal reflective surfaces. And as you can see, first of all, if you look at the left candlestick, you can actually make out the fraying on the wick, because this was a new unburnt candle. You can actually see the fraying on the wick, the unlit wick on the candle. I don't know, can we see on both sides? No, it's more on the left side than the right side. You can see more detail even in the wick of the candle. But also, unfortunately, in this image, if you look at the top and the bottom, you see a little bit of the sign of the aging of this film roll, because you have some green tint to the top and bottom of the image itself. But apart from that, also the left candlestick, you have some green hazing on the bottom part where it fits into the candelabra itself, with a little bit of blown out highlights. But anyway, the brass decorative ornaments in this candelabra are really nice, sharp in focus, most of them. Some of the some of the facets are a little bit blurred, and some of them are actually quite nice, sharp in focus. But if we look at the main thing with this image, which was the experimentation with the circular polarizer, if you look at the white background, you can see a very good defined shadow of the candelabra with the blue of the bottom blue glass piece. So you can see it fairly sharp and good as such, and we have very little glare in this. And if you look at the facets of the crystals that are dangling from various places, we don't have that many, white spots or hot spots or whatever you want to call them. So that it actually worked. The circular polarizer really did its job, and if I'm not remembering correctly, this was also where we used a snoot with a grid and the barn doors with a grid. So the shadow that is cast on the white side is actually from the snoot, and the barn doors with the grid, gave it a little bit more directed outside of the frame, so to speak, so we don't see so much in the black part. But I think this actually gave it a little bit of a depth and a more 3D look of the image, at least in my opinion. So even though it has some film issues in this picture, I still think it was a decent image. Okay, what was next? The next image was the individual candlestick holders, and this one was probably the one that came out mostly as I intended it to be. Because as you can see, the center candlestick holder, the one that is in the way back, that has a burnt candle on it, is very nicely defined, sharp in focus. There is some minor detail loss on the burnt part of the wick, but as you can see, we had this intentionally with a shallow depth of field in order to, blur out and give some nice bokeh or whatever you want to call it on the front rows of candlestick holders, and that it would be more of an emphasis on the center one. And I think I actually succeeded with it in this image. And also, as you can see on the edges on the candles and on the white side of the background, we have that golden hue from we used gold reflective umbrellas in this image. And I think it did what I intended it to be, to give it that soft, warm, ambient glow. Yeah, I think that actually made it fairly decently. So let's see now, we are 1, 2, 3, let's see, what was the fourth now? Well, the fourth was the little figurine in fake marble, which we took with the 150mm soft focus lens, the one that gives us a sharp center, but when we go out from the center we will get a soft focus effect. But this one actually did what it said on the till. Actually, we used it at its maximum aperture, which was f4. So if you look at the center line of the backdrop where the black and the white meet, that is very nicely blurred. We have some specular highlights on the bottom right hand corner in the white area. But if you look at the figurine itself, the hair is nice in focus. We can see some really good detail of the face, but and then we get these white highlights on the arms and the belly of the statue, and when we come down to the knee area, we sort of see a little bit of the softening of the image. So I think that this lens would make a much better effect if it was a greater distance between the subject and the camera. So I think the distance was a little bit short to get the full effect of the soft focus. But anyway, you can still see that the background is a bit more soft, even though this was a f4 aperture. But it still holds a little bit true that it was what I told you in the video, that it was not a full... I intended for the... I didn't use the rule of thirds that much. Instead, I used the inherent nature of this lens, that the center is the most sharply in focused part, and that's why I opted to have the face of the statue as much in the center as possible. But anyway, let's see what else we have here. Well, let's see here. 1, 2, 3. Well, the fifth was actually two images that we took. It was the cameras, the camera collection, and I actually made a little bit of a mistake here. I did this as a portrait standing one instead of a a panoramic or a horizontal. It was vertical instead of horizontal. The rotating back was still in a vertical portrait mode instead of a horizontal, more landscape mode. But I would say that I took the liberty of cropping these images a bit, and well, what can I say? Well, the first one, where we used two soft umbrellas, I would suspect that's what we used. I would turn your attention to the Nikon F501. In this image you can actually see the lettering saying F501. If I zoom in a little bit on it, on the pad, I can still read the 501, I can read the AF, I can read on all the cameras, I can read all the text. So I think this one, even though we missed a little bit of the Nikon EM's side of it, and a little bit of the Fujicolor film, yeah, you can see on the left side you have a little bit of, these parts are actually the extremes of the right and left side. You can even actually see on the far left a little bit of a black rim that is actually the end of the negative. So this is as wide as it got. Okay, so after that one, you can also see in this, in the extreme corners, or rather the left and right side, you can see some green fading yet again, which is, in my opinion, due to the age of the film roll. But anyway, let's go over to the second one, where we had, what was it? Was it one soft shoot-through umbrella and one silver No, wait, actually, the first one was the two silver reflective umbrellas, and the second one was when we used one shoot-through umbrella and one silver reflective umbrella. And as you can see that, if you zoom into the F501 and you look at the 501 marking, it's much harder to make out because of the shoot. I think this was the shoot-through umbrella version, because you get a more of a highlight of it, that the slanted angle of the camera actually matched up pretty nicely with the angle of the of the studio strobe, which actually made it reflect very highly in the Nikon F501, unfortunately, making the F501 logo much harder to make out. Now I'm seeing on the timer that we're actually running low on time, so I have to do a jump cut here, and we will continue shortly, so stay tuned. And we are back. Well, the next image was a little bit of the, not secret one, but the one with the number 7 attached to it. And yeah, this image was also one that we took with a, well, you can see for yourself what it is. It's a little bit of James Bond paraphernalia. But the interesting thing with this is that I kind of messed this up a bit. It was another one where I started to, this is another one where I actually experimented with a circular polarizer, and this one actually cut a bit too much light in the image. The first one with the Candelabra was much easier to see when the reflections disappeared and when they reappeared, so you could, you know, set the circular polarizing filter fairly accurately. But in this case it was much more difficult to see. So unfortunately it seemed like it cancelled out a fair bit of light instead. But anyway, as you can see, both of these displays are in acrylic see-through, or if it's, I don't think it's plexiglass, but it's some kind of acrylic casings. So that can be a hard thing with reflections, and especially when you are taking pictures with any type of flash and you have a reflective surface like these. So in a way the circular polarizer did its job, but if you can see in the black background card, you get a lot of noise, and the plaque on the front of the tracking device, I mean, that's also very faded and noisy. So this is one that I actually had to raise the exposure in Lightroom in order to get a decent image of it. So this one was a little bit, I wouldn't say a failure, but it's a learning experience. But anyway, it was a little bit of a mess up. Well, what do we have more then? Well, we have the product shot of the Mamiya 645 camera. And this one, on the other hand, it turned out decently. What we did with this was that we put the camera very far forward in the shot in order to blur out as much as possible of the background. Yet again, unfortunately, in this one we have the green tint in the top and the bottom of the image, but the camera itself came out fairly sharp. If I zoom in on this, the Mamiya logo on the top, the 645, it's fairly decently, clear, defined lines, and since it's a, what should we call it, striped 645, you can see it fairly decently. The Pro marking on the front of the camera and the battery check button, yes, you can see them fairly decently. And the side of the camera, you can see the hot shoe, the dark slide that's in the mirror up, yellow markings, the PC port, and the 645 Pro is very nicely, and you can read it fairly easily when you zoom in on it. So the side towards the white background is very nice and so on. The only things that I'm a little bit begrudged about with this is firstly on the top, the exposure compensation and the metering selector on the top of the prism finder. Those are fairly out of focus. They're very soft. You can see that they are there, but the sharpness falls off fairly rapidly. Even the film back as well on the side. You can say that the dark slide marks the transition from where it's fairly decently sharp and in focus to where it's blurred. And the motorized winding grip on the right side of the camera, or in the black left in the image, you get some good highlights in it, but if I had been thinking a step further, I would probably have put in some white cards or something out of frame. I would put some white cards and so on to reflect a bit of light, more light on the motorized grip, and so that the lens lid would, because in the lens lid on this camera you have embossed the Mamiya logo, but unfortunately it's black on black. But if we had put a little bit of light in there to make a little bit of highlights, you would probably be able to read out the Mamiya logo on the lens lid. So this image, it turned out decent in my opinion, but you have the green from the film. Once again, not much I can do about it, but it's something that was expected because it's a Lomo roll, and that the motor winder handle could have been a little bit better lit. But that's that. And now we actually have the last two. It's the little Warhol-esque setup, pop art. I mean, 32 cans of soup, Polaroid cameras, and Coca-Cola, which were all a bit of Andy Warhol staples. The lying down Coca-Cola, the first image is very gray. This one turned out to be one of those that had a lot of green in the top and the bottom. This entire image had a very green tint to it. So I had to manipulate it a bit in Lightroom to get away as much as possible of the green, which actually made it into a grayish mess. But that actually led me to increase other colors, among others the reds and the yellows. So if you look at the can, you can see some green specks on it, and it's a little bit cool that the Campbell's logo is not completely in the completely lit. Also in this image, you know that I only did use one studio strobe, and I used it with the barn doors. So you can see the directed light, and I didn't use a grid filter either on the strobe. But you can read, if you look at the camera, you can read the Polaroid logo very nicely. The Sun 600 is very obscured, you can't see that. And the light management system, you can't really read either. But if you look at the Coca-Cola cap on the bottle that is lying down next to the Polaroid camera, you can see that logo fairly accurately, and also the standing bottle in the right hand corner of the image, you can also see the Coca-Cola brand fairly accurately in focus. At least the bottle cap and the bottle neck on that said bottle was fairly decently in focus. But then we also had the last Coca-Cola image. This one I actually left a little bit of the green, and I warmed up the image post in Lightroom to give it a little bit more of a warm ambient effect. You can see that the Campbell's, you have a little bit less shadow on it, so almost the entire logo is present. The Coca-Cola bottle cap on the lying down bottle is much more defined. You have that little specular highlight that defines the roundness, and the white of the lettering shows up very nicely. The light management system on the Polaroid camera, that text is a little bit easier to see. The Sun 600 text on the bottom in the black is a little bit easier, and the Polaroid lettering and the logo is also a bit easier to see. And also, if you look to the far right on the standing up Coca-Cola bottle, you still have a fairly nice focus on the ridges of the red bottle cap. And actually, if I zoom in on my high definition, you can see you can even see the best before stamp on the bottleneck of the glass bottle. But anyway, I think this one was the better picture, even though you have the green of the age of the film. But as a whole, I think this actually turned out pretty nicely. Of the two images of the, this little Andy-esque setup. But yeah, I think that was actually the last image. This was a little bit of a interesting experience. A con with using the RB-67 is that you don't have that many frames per roll of film. You have 10 images per roll of film in the 6x7 format. I also do have a film back that does shoot in 6 times 4.5, but then you actually need a different focusing screen in the top of the viewfinder, which I don't unfortunately have. You need to mask it off so you can really see what type of crop factor you're working with. But anyway, I think we will end it here. I would like your comments in the section below after seeing this little short-esque 3-part series about shooting flash with the RB-67. Is it something you should have done differently? Is it something I should have thought about when doing this? Any tips or tricks would really be appreciated. And well, as always, this is Tobias Bergstrom from T.B.Photo X1.5 to FX, and I'd like to see you guys in the next video. And as always, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.